using a paring knife. There are a couple different ways that people will do this. I'm going to show you my method. Maybe I should start with the safer method. Let's start with the safer method. The safer method is to use your chef's knife to cut off one end. Same way we do with the other melons. Cut off the other end. And then if you're comfortable with this, you can make one slice through the top skin layer. You'll see some onions, I'm sure you've noticed it, that some layers will be halfway between this and the edible part. Again, in order for this to be actual value added, you just have to go until you have, this is a great example. The tops of this is kind of skin, and then the center is kind of edible part. So just remove all of that. Keep asking yourself that same question, would I eat this? I wouldn't eat this, so it should never go into the products that our consumers can eat. It may seem wasteful, but we're peeling. Peeling is waste. That's just a part of how that works. Okay? So that's peeling. Should I just do all peeling first? I did say I was going to show you two. Okay. So that is a safer way to do it. As your knife skills start to increase and you feel more comfortable using a paring knife, this is the way that I do it. This is definitely a faster, I think, way of doing it because there's less picking up, putting down. You can hold your paring knife in your hand. Again, when you're in the position that I'm about to show you, the idea is to not have any torque on what you're doing. You're not moving the blade towards anything. You're not pushing the blade or pulling the blade towards anything. You're just allowing the sharpness of the blade to do the cutting. So I would hold my onion obviously in my hand. My thumb is sort of my guide. I know in my mind that I only want to let the paring knife get as close to my thumb as I absolutely have to, but I want to keep a distance as well. So I'm going to let the sharpness of the knife cut around the core. If you could see it from my angle, you would see that my thumb is actually below the line of my knife. So if I do slip, I'm not slipping straight into my thumb. If I were to hold it like this, now I'm in danger because if I do slip, then that's going to come through, and the next thing it's going to stop at is potentially the bone in my thumb. I'm sure you've all had cuts on your fingers before. They are the bleeders. They are the ones that bleed. So again, same thing across the top. You can see the angle. Not great body position, but so you guys can see it. That my thumb is never in the line of my knife. And with the same tool now, I can make that cut. Again, once you get comfortable with this, I would actually just use the paring knife to pick up the pieces of skin that I don't want and just start tearing away at it. This looks dangerous, and it kind of is, I guess, but because my thumb is actually lined up with the flat side of the blade, there's some safety. This is purely comfort and skill-based technique only.
That would be how you want to peel it if you're doing more of like a doing rings. You put it down. If you're doing rings, onion rings, then risk sort of like too much into the body of the onion.
I see what you mean. Yeah, certainly, yeah. And I'm just going to clear this up here. Again, I'm not a fan of crossing over my body, but I want to keep this hand clean for this next step. We're just going to go straight to a couple of
the best
dice.
place for your compost be?
I'm right-handed. I would actually like it potentially a little bit further away, so I could just pick up my cutting board and scoop everything away.
So you just have a space to put your peeled produce.
Yeah.
And so that you would lift your thing off.
Yeah, exactly. So this will depend on item by item. If we're processing a lot of onions in a day, my suggestion would be that we set up 3 stations. Someone just peels. Someone just dices, someone just portions. If you're only going to do 2 or 3 pounds of onions, not necessary to do that. As we get ramping up with the trap commissary, you guys will not be doing 1 or 2 pounds of anything. That commissary is going to be very, very busy, and you guys will be doing bags of onions. You'll be doing case lots of cabbage. So that's where those efficiencies will have to start to come into play a little bit more. More news on that when I get back from vacation in August. We're actually going to start to automate some items as well. So the days of dicing onions by hand are not super extended. But understanding the basics is still going to be really important. But we are going to start to automate some of this stuff. You guys will be shredding cabbage with a machine, dicing onions with a machine, yam fries, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so let's get back to cutting on the onions. What's the time like? I feel like I'm rambling on now. Okay, we're almost there. You should be washing your hands as often as possible. I just did it because my hands were a little bit stucky and I just touched my phone. I don't know that anyone's going to be eating these onions, but my phone, it's like everyone else's phone. I touch it all day long. So I just did that. But as a rule of thumb, yeah, absolutely. Wash your hands as often as you possibly can. If you're moving from onions to melons, for example, you'd be changing your cutting board as well. I'm not worrying about that right now. Part of what I'm going to do is actually give you guys color-coded cutting boards. So there will be dedicated onion boards. Once you wash this, the chance of the taste of the onion carrying over to your next products is super limited. It's very unlikely to happen. But as you move from task to task during the same day, if I were to do all my onion dicing first, for example, then my melons, those melons will taste like that. So we're just going to keep dedicated boards for dedicated products. Okay, so now cutting. We will look at dicing and we will look at julienne today. Let's keep it with that. Every onion has a core. You want to start with your core side up. The core of the onion is your friend right now, and you want to preserve this friend as much as possible. You need a relationship with this core. So starting from the core, again, my fingers are completely out of the way, straight down, and then we've got 2 halves. So that has preserved my little buddy. He's still there, and I've given myself a nice flat surface to work with. This is where we talk about finger position. Most experienced cutters will use a curled position with their fingers. This is something that is not comfortable for everyone when they start their adventures in cutting. When they start doing this sort of thing. If it's something that you are not comfortable with, but you would like to keep your fingertips, it's something that you just need to practice so that you can get comfortable with this. When I first started in my culinary world, I absolutely hated doing this. I absolutely hated it. Now, I freak out my partner at home because I can dice onions, I can chiffonade basil, I can chop parsley, I can do all of those things while maintaining eye contact and a conversation with her. And it scares her because she's like, oh my God, you're going to cut your fingers off. I won't cut my fingers because my fingers will never be between my blade and the cutting board because I always know where they are. So even if I'm doing cuts that seem dangerous, there is 0 chance that my fingers are getting underneath there because that's a good angle. Because it's the face of the blade that is touching my knuckles. I'm never underneath it. And the best way to prevent injuries, we know that you need the right tools, is to just always know where are the tips of my fingers, where is the blade going, where my fingers staying. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to dicing. Again, my body position is going to change a little bit because I want you guys to be able to see this. To get a nice even dice, first you determine your size, And so we're going to go for about, let's aim for 3/8 of an inch, so just under ½ inch. And you start your first cut, if you guys can all see this, on somewhat of a bias. You have an awareness, your core is right here. You can see the lines that that the onions have, similar to grains of meat. So we're going across the grain and down. And I'm just going to hold my knife up so you can see how deep it went. It didn't go all the way in. I don't know if you can see that. And then I'm going to do the same thing here at approximately the same thickness that I did on this first one. Again, this might not be perfect because this is not a great body position. Same thing existed there, if you guys can see how deep that went. And of course, my little buddy is still there, so the entire onion is staying together. And this one will take 2 more because I have a thickness from the outside of the onion to the blade that goes in. At the same thickness, the same depth that I did these, I'm going to start to cut across now. Now I can go straight to the cutting board. You can see some of it is starting to come off, but the pieces that have come off are at the size that I want to end up dicing at. But the rest of it is still completely intact because the core is still there. And now I can go straight down. See my fingers stay nice and tight. Oops.
So much faster than how I learned how to do it.
Sure. I still have my little buddy, and the core is still holding some of this. There's still a bit of usable product here, and so now you can just manually come back and tighten that up. Again, my anal retentive nature won't allow these little strips to come, so I'll finish that off as well. So half of this onion is very, very close to in size, in uniformity of size. This can go in the rubbish bin. So that is dicing onions. Now when we want to julienne these onions, we have a very similar idea. The core needs to stay here so that we've got, so it'll stay together. And similar to what we talked about when we were looking at the melon, we want to, but reverse. Now we want to go from the outside of the onion and we want to aim towards the core. My fingers are still going to stay in that curl position. This one's much safer even because there's very little chance that I'm going to get to my fingers this way. But as I go around, I'm going to do this way, the angle of my knife is going to change to try to match these outside lines, but also pointing towards the center of the onion. So it's a little bit hard to see while the cutting is happening, but, and I'm going to exaggerate this actually to make it a little bit more obvious, but this is the shape of the knife, or the position of the knife as I go to julienne. Again, not a great body position, but I want you guys to see this. As I start to need a little bit more control.
So this part you're actually going through the core. You're not going to try to
This,
keep the core.
no, this part you're going through the core, and you'll see in a second that there's really only a few pieces left. If I do this properly, there are really only a few pieces left that have any core at all. And it'll be, once you get a little bit more practice, it'll be super easy to find that piece, trim it off, and then back to the other. We're gonna do the peppers.
So for this kind of stuff, we don't have any machine who will be cutting this way commercially available, especially where there's a lot of.
This one you will.
cutting.
This one you will have. Until we change our spec, then you probably won't have one to do this cutting. And I'm not sure entirely that we'll need that one right away. But we'll investigate it. We'll just see. Sorry, I was doing this.